Welcome in to the Fun Astrology Podcast for Thursday, November 18th. Thomas Miller, thanks for joining us. We are in eclipse countdown, aren't we? So remember, the full moon is tomorrow at 4 a.m. The eclipse peaks at 4:02 p.m., 12 hours apart. Got a great question on SpeakPipe from one of you guys. That's the little thing up at the top of the Fun Astrology website. And I know we've got some browser issues with that website. I'm working through them as physically best I possibly can. But the SpeakPipe is there, and it works fine. This was a great question about manifesting around the lunar cycle. So I thought we would do that ahead of the eclipse tomorrow. We'll take care of that today. The moon today is in Taurus, as it was yesterday, as it will be for the full moon, but then it moves into Gemini for the eclipse. So the energy the last couple of days is ruled by Venus, and it's Taurus. It's earthy, it's stable, it's consistent. And we have a trine up there today in the sky. Mercury is trining Neptune. So let's take the positive side of the trine and let's move that over towards spiritual communication. I mean, you could go down the foggy Neptunian illusion path if you want to, but that's a trine, so why do that? Take the positive side and realize that your spiritual antenna could be extra heightened today because that is a Mercury in Scorpio. So if you need a message from the universe, today should be a really good day to get one.
I had a question about kind of the full moon, but moons in general. I heard something this morning for the first time about the full moon coming up on the 19th being in correspondence to the new moon of May 2018. And that you put in your manifestations on the new moon and that we are seeing harvests, 2 years later in this full moon coming. I would like to know more about that if you have anything on it. I have never heard of this. Thank you so much.
Great question, especially ahead of the eclipse tomorrow and the full moon. So let's talk about what's going on here. Obviously, you get the idea. We're talking about lunar cycles. That's really the question. And yes, I totally believe in cycles. In fact, W.D. Gann was the big financial astrologer of about 100 years ago. And he was brilliant with his work mathematically around cycles. Human cycles have distinct patterns. The Pluto cycle, we've talked about on here quite a bit, 250 years. Well, you go back, humanity has 250-year markers that are substantial. We just had 2020. The 20-year cycle is substantial. I think that we have to say that they are markers. They are not absolutes. We can't say that when something comes around like that, it is a foregone given that something is going to happen, but I think we use them as guides, as channels, if you will. But yes, I totally buy into cycles and rhythms. It's part of the natural process of Earth. Look at the ocean. Look at the tide, right? I mean, I like to take what we're talking about here and then go find it in nature. If you can find it in nature, and then if you observe patterns in your own life, you don't have to be evangelical about it and try to project it out for everyone, but at least you have something that's working for you. And I think that's the key, is find out what makes sense in your own life, what patterns and sequences happen for you on some kind of frequency or consistency. And that's the other point, is I only talk about stuff on here that I've experienced. And while that is not scientific, it is authentic. Now, what she's talking about is going back to the new moon in Taurus, which was May 14th, 2018. Roll forward 2.5 years, and here we are at the full moon in Taurus, completing that cycle. Now, as I go back to May 2018, there were definitely some things that started processing or triggering during that time. Is this a completion of them for me personally? No. They are still evolving, and a lot of things have changed between May of 2018 and 2021 now. So I see these articles, I see a lot of them, and I used to follow them, and I would try to journal it. I would go back to when these original things started. I don't see a sequence in my own life. Does that make it that there wouldn't be for you? Absolutely not. You would have to set up your own cycle tracking in order to see if there are correlations. And what they're talking about with this eclipse is it correlating back to 2004. So you'd have to go back and think about, well, where were you in 2004? Another reason that I don't talk about it a lot is that I turned my life around in 2008, 2009. So for me, anything before that was simply unconscious. I was not intentionally, consciously creating my life back then. I was responding and reacting. But what we do know is obviously the cycles of the moon. So between the new moon, we have the waxing crescent phase, first quarter, gibbous, full moon, and then we repeat it backwards, going back to the new moon. So there's the full 30-day cycle where really we have different phases even within that. And I think that that is a beautiful cycle of expansion and contraction. And it's a really good pattern to connect with. In other words, we see this repetition of 2 weeks pushing forward, 2 weeks letting things digest, letting them settle, letting them manifest, if you will. And you can push that out to years, and then you could even push it out to decades, I guess, if you wanted to follow that cycle. Now, I'm preaching to myself here because I'm not the one that wants to rest, and neither is our culture. I mean, our culture has one gear. It's forward and it's full out. But farmers realize that they have to let their soil rest. Many dietitians know the value of fasting. Letting your body resting from digestion has significant health benefits. But aside from following the lunar cycle through the month, we also can follow it in a couple of other places. And that is the transiting moon, which we talk about on here quite a bit, where it changes signs every 2 to 2.5 days. So you can obviously look at where's the moon now and see if you're feeling that energy, like we talked about earlier, Taurian energy right now. Then you have the secondary progressed moon. This is where your emotions are right now, basically, where your heart is. Then we have the big, much longer, slower, methodic, 30 years in a sign solar arc moon, but it and its aspects are equally important. Now, to me, the strongest of all of this is the one that I just mentioned, the secondary progressed moon. It takes 27 and a half years to go all the way around the chart. And this is one of the really cool things because it precedes our Saturn return. So as the progressed moon goes around the chart, taking 27 and a half years, that is our walk around the various areas of our life where we are creating. And then when Saturn return hits us at about 29, we get the payback of that. So yes, the moon creates, then Saturn manifests. Then we repeat it again, and we have the same thing happen in our 50s. Now, the progressed moon would take a couple of years per sign to go through. So 12 signs, 27 years, right? So just a little bit over 2 years per sign. And that's what I would spend my time focusing on, is taking those areas of life, the houses and the signs that the moon is in over that progressed period of 27 years, and see there where the moon is creating and being conscious with that process. And let me just mention that all of that is bundled and put into the 101 course, because I wanted you to have with that course not only the knowledge of the language, but also the application even to that extent. So we talk about all of that in the 101 course, so you can get there and be able to study this on your own. All right, look, we are setting things up for the eclipse, and I just thought that was a really great question to take care of this very important piece. Where does the moon and its cycles fit into our own manifesting? Now, I would take this information and other information and what some other people say and what they've experienced, put it all together, and create your own formula. What works in your life? Eclipse day, full moon day. We'll be doing some howling tomorrow. I'll see you back for that. Have a great one. Bye-bye.